Well, hello, that's me again. Today is June 15. It's Saturday. This is something for the weekend for you guys. And let me start with something which everybody discusses now, and this is what Mr. Putin described in terms of the conditions for the start. That means what? Sufficient conditions that are not final of talking to, Ukraine about peace talks. And as it already have been discussed, it's pretty much in the know for anybody who followed actually the whole situation with this special military operation. Those who actually bought my book, my latest book, The America's Final War, and read it, they would also find pretty much detailed description of the negotiations in the Istanbul and what Russia proposed. Obviously, things changed since then. And so now Mr. Putin names conditions for Ukraine peace talks, in which, of course, he reiterates a lot what have been discussed in Istanbul, but anybody who followed special military operation and statements by Russian officials, you should remember that this very specific clause, which is, of course, they talk about considering the situation or reality on the ground. And reality on the ground today is such that actually Mr. Putin says that in order for us to start communicate on any kind of the peace or even, arrange peace talks, is that I stress that he says all the territory of those four regions. Nobody discusses Crimea anymore. Crimea is Russia, always was and always will remain. But he is talking about the territory of the Donetsk, Lugansk, Zaporozhye, and Kherson regions. And here is his definition. I stress the entire territory of those regions as defined by their administrative borders at the time they joined Ukraine. In August 1991, Putin tells them that, armed forces of Ukraine has to, get the hell out of there. And this is a fundamental, bottom line, if you wish. So, and this is what Mr. Putin stated. Now, we have immediate reaction, hysterical, naturally, and this was obviously a very specific proposition which was done on the eve of this funny meeting for Zelensky in Zurich or whatever, in Switzerland somewhere. Nobody cares. The people of the very low rank are present there. So, and yeah, Mr. Putin was also stressing constantly that Zelensky is not a legitimate president anymore. So, but New York Times immediately reacts. My God, today they come out and, well, basically publish what was the documents of the Ukraine-Russia peace. Well, they talk about is elusive as ever, but in 2022 in Istanbul they were talking, and they published the full text of the agreement, which was achieved in Istanbul, which of course still imposed full demilitarization of Ukraine and preserving of the neutral status. Russia said that you can go to European Union. Nobody cares if you go there. Well, they will wait for, 100 years to get into European Union. But, here we have it. Representatives from the warring nations held peace talks in the early weeks of the Russian invasion. They fizzled. Documents from those talks show why any new ones will face major obstacles, and they give their those documents. You can download them, read it. Well, let me put it this way: New York Times commentaries on this issue do not hold much value because it is New York Times, as you might understand. But at least they publish those documents. Mr. Putin was very, how to put it, deliberate in explaining what is going on there, obviously, in Ukraine. And he actually reiterated what most of the... I write about this in my latest book, but it has been repeated time after time. And of course, American or Western media in general completely ignore this because they know only how to do the narratives. And this is what Mr. Putin says. Russian troops never intended to capture Kiev. The idea that they will capture Kiev, could they? If need be, they could, but they never planned. And Moscow forces approached the Ukrainian capital only to persuade Vladimir Zelensky government to engage in talks, the president has said. It was said yesterday, well, 2 days ago, on the meeting with the people of the Russian Foreign Ministry. And the question is, it was a classic demonstration of force. It was indeed to convince Ukraine to sit at the table of negotiations, which happened in Istanbul until, of course, this poodle from United Kingdom, Boris Johnson, on behalf of the United States government, on behalf of Biden administration, sabotage those negotiations. The question, of course, was, how to put it politely, why they thought that they could sabotage it and get away with it. Of course, they miscalculated, because as I am constantly on the record, ad nauseam, those people do not know what strategy is. They have no intellectual or, professional toolkit to deal with this. But here we are. Here we are today. Let me explain to you what is happening. Let me explain the, so to speak, realities on the ground of which Russian government, primarily President Putin, Mr. Lavrov, Mr. Rybkov, Maria Zakharova, and on and on and on, Mr. Volodin, of course, the, chairman of Duma, so the speaker of Duma, and I can continue to name those people, why they constantly talk about having understanding of the reality on the ground. Let me explain reality on the ground and why Russians know that this would be rejected, which it was half an hour after this proposition by Vladimir Putin was issued. It was rejected by Mr. Zelensky, but Mr. Zelensky is inconsequential anymore. He is not legitimate president of Ukraine. Actually, so as my friends this morning told me that, the Ukrainian parliament also, its status expires at somewhere in August, doesn't matter. So there you go. You have essentially people who usurped the power. Mr. Zelensky certainly became a dictator, and the whole idea about this democracy BS talk, it's just ridiculous, preposterous for anybody from the point of view of the international laws. And there are international laws, including which are based on very much on the many issues of the, Roman law, for example, and other things which have been developed throughout the human civilization. And here we have this reality on the ground. Let's start with, how to put it politely, this. Ukraine, it's a terrorist regime there. It's supported by Washington and London, and because they're cowards there, they support all kinds of the terrorist activities against Russian civilians. They love to see Russian women, children, old people suffer, getting killed, and what have you. So that's why they support now openly the Azov Nazi brigade, and they pretend that it is not, but it is, and I am on the record. Most of the American journalists who operate from the Ukraine primarily, they are complicit in war crimes, and they, war criminals for the most part. There are many of them are, and not only in relation to the special military operation, but, they supported the death of millions of Iraqis, Afghani people. They gang raped Serbia or Yugoslavia, if you wish. So, they continue, they support that, and 6 civilians were killed when Ukrainian troops struck a 5-story apartment block in the city of Shebekino in Russia's western Belgorod region, Governor Vyacheslav Gladkov said in the early hours of Saturday. And as you can see yourself, they just blew up the apartment block. The people live there, civilians, have nothing to do with military, but that's... Oh, do you recognize the Israeli Defense Force in Gaza? There you go. The pattern is the same. Shebekino is located near the border with Ukraine. It has become a frequent target of rocket and drone attacks since February 2022, when Russia launched its military operation. So, why do they do this apart from the hatred? And I had the funny comment from somebody, I don't remember, in a discussion board, like, oh yeah, I know, like, my relatives know some Ukrainians, it's not true what you say. Well, you know what, you have to understand, I'm talking from the point of view of the sample size statistically. And I have communication with many people who themselves, much of them are actually Ukrainians, but Ukrainians, who are now identified as Russians, and they are all from Ukraine. And believe me, they tell me, and well, people who are actually actively engaged in the special military operation, including in the combat, that there are no friends of Russia in Ukraine. Well, there are some few. They are scared, and they are hiding. Essentially, they're hiding their feelings and all. Majority of Ukrainian population wanted, when the people say that they voted for Zelensky as the peace candidate, they omit the most important clause in his peace candidacy. He was still going to, and everybody who voted for him, at least most of them, they wanted this peace after finishing off Donbass and, basically Donetsk and Lugansk republics. And so, but yeah, whatever, it's difficult to say anything, explain to the people like that, because they think they know. They think so that because they have a couple of relatives or couple of acquaintances, they can make a conclusion on the country, which at the start of the special military operation had a population of more than 35 million people. Not anymore, because 15 million people actually ran away from this country, not willing to die for the Kiev regime. But here it is, as you can see yourself, just today. Do you remember my previous videos? Do you see how it grows every day? This is what you can see. 1940 killed and wounded, as I already stated. Treat this number as plus minus give and take amount of KIAs, because as I already stated, every day Russia erases from the order of battle of the armed forces of Ukraine up to one brigade of it's just destroyed, simply. Now you can see yourself for yesterday actually, statistics of 3 tanks, APCs, 37 armored vehicles, artillery and mortars, 48, they shot down 138 UAVs. So, and yeah, the scale of this slaughter, as I already stated, it has to dawn now to all those, I don't know who runs this thing, Lieutenant General Aguto, he's the big honcho, American honcho, who heads this, Pentagon, planning department. These guys obviously, well, they probably treat Ukrainians as Untermenschen, like subhumans, because they throw them in, because they would never do this with the American soldiers. First, because they will get killed in tremendous amounts, but because some of them would be court-martialed for basically killing people like this. Well, apart from the fact that they are not really good military leaders, they are not good operationally. So, and when you look at this, my God, this is really impressive. Hardly impressive, though, from the human point of view. But the slaughter continues, and each day it grows. And if you want to see how hell looks like, just go and look at what Volchansk is today, especially in dynamics. This is something U.S. Army never faced before and will never face, if it decides to really go there, but they not. So here we have now also this issue of the Liptsy. As you remember, also the dynamics in my few last videos, you can go and look it up. I kind of concentrated on Liptsy a little bit. As you can see yourself now, Russians are not in several kilometers or in Liptsy, they are inside of the northern outskirts of Liptsy, and they just killing whatever is being thrown on them, and armed forces of Ukraine continue those mid storms. They counterattack. They throw like platoon, 2 platoons up to a company, on the counterattacking. They get destroyed. They roll back. They then substituted with other type of people who are, well, basically pumped with drugs and indoctrinated, or some of them just, you have to pump them with drugs, because most of the people are taken from streets anymore. And when you look at this horrendous slaughter, that pretty much explains to you why Mr. Putin also says, you see, this is what's happening. And that's what's going to happen even more in coming days, because they do not want to really, accept the reality on the ground. And as I already stated before, they are definitely very desperate, up to the point that you have this guy. Well, Mr. Cameron is not a bright fellow. He is a shyster, a typical product of the British education and so-called elites. I don't know, something with inbreeding there. I don't know. They're definitely morons. But so he has to, maintain this facade of the United Kingdom supposedly mattering in this issue. And he says that West must show Moscow that it stands completely behind Ukraine by sanctioning everything Russian. Britain Foreign Secretary David Cameron said, "We will show Russian President Vladimir Putin that we are completely behind Ukraine. We will chase the money and the oil, we will stop the gas, we will stop the ships, we will do everything we can to stop the Russian war machine and show Putin the folly of his actions." I already had people who already pointed to me that Mr. Mearsheimer said that, oh yeah, US Navy can, sink Russians, all those ships. He obviously doesn't understand what Russian Navy is, what weapons it carries. So, as I already stated, it takes about one zircon to sink a single, destroyer of the early Burke class or any kind of the British Royal Navy, type of vessel. It doesn't really matter. I mean, you probably need a couple of zircons to sink the aircraft carrier. So, and those people do not understand that it will be launched and targeting will be received beyond the range of anything, for example, that Russian carrier aviation can do. But again, as I already stated, mathematics, especially algebra, let alone calculus and good geometry, it's not strong forte of those people in the Western elites, including John Mearsheimer, who doesn't understand what reality he is living in. For all his, saying about that, he understands what is going to happen to Ukraine and it's what's going to happen to the West. But still, he doesn't understand what military power he is dealing with. And that is why, for example, this situation with Russian submarine and Admiral Gorshkov is so important. But guess what? To demonstrate to you what is happening really in terms of the modern naval warfare, Associated Press today says that, oh my God, so the US Navy faces its most intense combat since World War II against Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels. So United States is already facing, which, by the way, it is intense. You know why? Because you still have to constantly, deplete your defensive package when you deal with all those drones and ancient Chinese knockoffs of the anti-shipping missiles with the 60s design. And so they say, aboard the USS Laboon in the Red Sea, the US Navy prepared for decades to potentially fight the Soviet Union, then later Russia and China on the world waterways. Well, yeah. But instead of a global power, the Navy finds itself locked in combat with a shadowy Iran-backed rebel group based in Yemen. The US-led campaign against the Houthi rebels overshadowed by Israel-Hamas war in the Gaza Strip. So, well, yeah, it's American news, and yeah, those people will know what important and what is not, but here it is, yesterday's report, and we have even the video from the Associated Press where the guy talks about, Rear Admiral Mark Megas talks about the US Navy finds itself locked into combat against Yemeni Houthi rebels. Why it is intense, I already stated. It's the amount of the not projectiles, most of what they are dealing with and facing, it's actually the iterations of the anti-shipping missiles or anti-shipping drones, and it is depletion of the defensive package or whatever they have in terms of the carrier battle group, which has been pushed actually out into the Indian Ocean because it's very dangerous. Now there are rumors talking about the allegedly Ike, USS Eisenhower, being hit and almost damaged beyond repair. It's all BS. First, you cannot really sink or damage much such a vessel, the ship, as the USS Ike, which is 100,000 metric tons and armored plating on the deck. So it takes a little bit more than just merely some Houthi drones or even the older anti-ship missiles. But what is most important here is the statement by Vladimir Putin, which he made, a few days ago. Not yesterday, or 2 days ago, but, a week or so ago when he stated, well, yeah, sure, we can supply the weapons to other people if United States wants to fight proxy war through Ukraine with Russia, Russians can fight the proxy war against the United States. And Russians have way better weapons, everything from air defense to anti-ship missiles to any kind of other cruise missiles. And guess what? Just to give you a demonstration, Syria officially has the export version of the P-800 Onyx missile. So guess what? Somebody may, deliver that not export variant with the 800-kilometer range, and this is supersonic missile. Can you imagine? Can air defense of, for example, U.S. carrier group, those, Aegis equipped destroyers, shoot down the salvo of such a missile? No, they cannot. So they may shoot some, but there will be many leakers. And that's when the United States faces what a late genius man, great operational and tactical mind, primarily tactical mind, Mr. Captain Wayne Hughes. Brilliant man, who wrote this book in 2000, and he warned about fleet tactics and coastal combat. And he was prophetic, of course. And of course, the only problem with his book, apart from the brilliant academic, and historical review of all this, including this marvelous salvo model, which is very workable and which could be easily, tested against the practical of outcomes, was that he was primarily looking and counting and talking about what is called the Exocet missile equivalence. And of course, we remember what Exocet is. It is subsonic French anti-shipping missile, which made name for itself during the Falkland conflict between Argentina and United Kingdom. You know how it all ended up for Brits. Actually, they obviously won the war, not least through the threats by Ronald Reagan and his administration to Argentina, to Buenos Aires, that if things continue this way, nuclear weapons will come into play. And so Argentinians surrendered, but not before using only 5 Exocet missiles. They sunk 2 ships. So the story, and what can I say? So, and Hughes obviously was talking about the Exocet variants, but we're talking now about supersonic variants of something like extremely capable and really scary missile such as Onyx. So guess what? Those Onyxes and Bastion coastal complex may appear somewhere, where it will make very difficult for the United States Navy to really face anything. So that's the thing. And then, of course, we have this situation. Mr. Bhadrakumar, Indian diplomat, he talks about what has already happened, the massive event, massive, colossal. And he is talking about that yesterday, the death of petrodollar is a Biden legacy. Petrodollar is the foundation of American, let's put it this way, standard of living, if you wish, in the end. And alleged, PR campaigns about this all-American might and all that things. And that's what Mr. Hadrakumar writes. The deep state would have been alert 5 years ago when candidate Joe Biden announced that he, if elected as president, was determined to make the Saudi rulers pay the price and make them, in the fact, the pariah that they are. And then Mr. Bhadrakumar makes some very important revelations which many people still do not understand. And this is what he writes. But instead, the deep state felt delighted that Biden was just the man to succeed Donald Trump. Well, guess what? Biden probably knew by then that the American intelligence had concluded that the role of Mohammed bin Salman, the Saudi crown prince and the de facto leader of the country, in the killing of the dissident journalist Jamal Khashoggi, who was the strategic asset of the CIA for navigating the next Saudi succession and ensuing regime change, to a happy ending. Khashoggi decapitation crippled Washington game plan to install a pliable ruler in Riyadh. And things were developing really interestingly. In great royal style, last Sunday, Riyadh simply let the 50-year-old petrodollar agreement between the United States and Saudi Arabia to expire. In the history of global finance, few agreements have wielded as many benefits as the petrodollar pact did for the US economy. At its core, the agreement stipulated that Saudi Arabia would price its oil export exclusively in US dollars and invest in surplus oil revenues in treasury bonds. And in a quid pro quo, the US would provide military support and protection to the kingdom. My. Never since the attack of the Houthis, same old Houthis, by the slow drones on the Aramco facilities, and with the Patriot Pact 3 with American crews failing to repel any single drone, that's when actually Saudis recognized that, well, American military hardware is not that good. Now they have the special military operation. And they see actually whose military performs and whose doesn't. And of course we understand NATO hardware is primarily for sale. It still can, create some damage. But first, you can quote me. You can quote me to any American so-called AD officer. American air defense is not even in the same league with Russia. And of course, everybody understands that when you look at the performances of such a weapon system as Panzer, as Tor M2, let alone Buk M3, and I'm not even talking about S-400, it's all very impressive, to put it mildly. And Saudis are not stupid, they see it. And then, of course, you can see yourself that how Russia got rid of all of its treasury bonds. The same is happening with China. We have now 52 countries, I believe, additionally applying for the BRICS membership. We're looking at the whole remaking of the world order and dollar becoming essentially irrelevant in the major economies in the world. And for example, in Russia, they just stopped trading dollar on the Moscow Stock Exchange. And not big, so it doesn't matter. That's what many people do not understand. That much of the petrodollar and the US treasuries have been built around not only recycling the dollar, which of course it was the main benefit, but on the mythology of the American military power, which could supposedly get into some third world crap hole and make it, pay in dollars. You remember what happened to Mr. Gaddafi? Well, that happened not because of some human rights, which is BS, and the West doesn't care. The West supports terrorism, essentially, in broader sense. But because he wanted the gold to be some kind of the alternative monetary unit guiding the oil sales. Now, United States, look at the gigantic oil trade between Russia and China, or Russia and India. It's all done in rubles, yuans, it's all done in the old, whatever, currencies people want to, and nothing they can do about it. So, because obviously United States simply ran out of resources. And that's another thing, which is the strategic miscalculation of the historic proportion. Well, bigger than Hitler. They thought that a Russian economy will collapse, that 2023 counteroffensive, those sanctions from hell. And here we have my good friends from Duran, Alex and Alexander, talking about, how Russian economy continues to surge, and I suggest you to listen to this, because obviously Russian economy is not just fourth in the world. Russian economy is fourth in the world by far, and actual size of Russian economy is not even $6.5 trillion, even PPS, purchase power parity, which is still extremely, inconsequential, really index, but yes, many people said, and I am one of them, you can read it, what I was writing since 2014, we're looking at the Russian economy being about 40% of economy of the United States. Granted that Russian population is about 40% of the population of the United States. So if you want to see how you can, if you want to learn how and why this all happening, look at my blog from 2014. I was tracking and reporting on this non-stop for 10 years, that everything they understand about Russian economy is about zero. including the International Monetary Fund and World Bank. And now they suddenly begin to adjust their indices because, oh my God, Russian economy, well, it's much larger than German economy. And it is larger than, Japanese economy. And, well, how it happened? Let me show you one of the indices, which is critical of understanding how it is. It is extremely rough. Do not project it to everything, but it gives you about the bottom line. Here's from 2022. By the way, now 2024, those numbers are even higher because Russian economy just exploding. So look at this. If you take a look at breakdown, which is still, these are all very inaccurate calculations, but at least, it's International, Energy Agency, and as you can see yourself, in 2022, United States produced whatever trillion or the 2 whatever the hell is 2 billion 182 what is called oil million tons oil equivalent, and as you can see yourself, it is 182. Russian was 822. Today, probably about 1,000 plus. So, because considering how Russian economy already in the last 3 years just absolutely grew, and so when you calculate, divide 822 by 2082, and you will get around 38% of the size of the consumption. You see, consumption, not production. Russia produces 70% of the energy production of the United States. And so you get there pretty much about good spread in terms of the real size of Russian economy. And just to demonstrate to you why it is very important to understand why financial indices are absolutely crap. I mean, they are misleading. But this is what actually American strategists use because they have problems with algebra and mathematics in general. They understand only dollars. But let me put it this way. Russia, for example, doesn't have an extensive surfing industry. In the United States, surfing industry is very large. It's something like on the order of, well, some people say it's 11 or 12 billion dollars, the surfing things. And, well, the Russians obviously can surf in Black Sea, but that's about it. Russia simply doesn't have, this culture and everything. What is the issue of the surfing industry on the GDP? Obviously, it contributes. It is definitely a material, tangible thing. But the problem is, how does it actually reflect on the actual combat capability and military capability and the size of real economy, which really matters, including in terms of the consumption? When you look attentively that Russia is the largest food exporter today in the world. Make your own conclusion. And of course, Russian prices have nothing to do with prices which as they marked by Wall Street or any kind of the financial institution from the West, and plus they are becoming irrelevant. And this is what I wanted to tell you today, guys. And in conclusion, as always, I want to thank my wonderful patrons. And those who can afford, please support me on Patreon or buy me a coffee and two. I would really appreciate you doing this. So this is it for today, guys. Have a nice weekend, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.